QQQ. I was like, look, this technology thing is only going to get bigger and bigger, and artificial intelligence is taking over the world. And even if you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, it's a higher probability that QQQ is gonna go crazy just based off of the landscape of everything that we're hearing is all based on artificial intelligence and technology. And I mean, if you look at the 52-week low for QQQ, it was $281, and it's at $422 now.
$422. Yep.
For ETF, that's crazy, and
that's insane.
And we should start doing like how Kai Cenat does, where he has like videos that play. Mike, make a note of that, because when we was on a Breakfast Club, the first time we was on a Breakfast Club actually, and I had mentioned at that time I had a call for QQQ for, I think it was like 350, and was saying like, what do you think the probability of QQQ reaching 350 over the course of 2 years? That was 3 years ago. So what I'm saying is this: we just came from Davos, and we got a lot of insight on where the world is headed. You have to invest at your own risk, but it's a high probability that these
certain things are guaranteed. Let's say it.
These chip stocks are going to continue to go up. The good ones, and the Qs are going to continue to go up. These trillions of dollars getting pumped into, when you see Meta talking about they're going to spend billions of dollars on NVIDIA chips over the next couple of years. This is not a bubble.
It's not a fad.
No, not a fad. Artificial intelligence is not a bubble. Will we be talking about it 24 hours a day? Probably not. But as far as the technology is here, it's only going to get more and more persuasive in the day-to-day use of everybody's lives. All these technology companies are going to invest billions of dollars into artificial intelligence. You would be doing yourself a tremendous disservice if you wasn't invested in tech, if you wasn't invested in these chip companies. And like I said, you could even take the ETF route if you want to just do the Qs. Over the course of the next 10 years, it would be extremely high probability that you'll see returns. You'll see returns if you're invested in technology. QQQ, SMH, NVIDIA, Microsoft.
All have been called here. Yeah. What does it cost you not to do it? And AMD, AMD was on a hell of a run.
I wanted to go there. I was going to go because I'm glad you brought up the Zuckerberg part, because I don't want that to go over people's heads. You're talking about the CEO of Meta, who's on an interview saying that they are going to buy 350,000 H100 chips from NVIDIA. 350,000. Now that might sound like that's a lot, but when you realize the cost of these chips, the average chip, right, on the low end is 16,000 for one. Third-party markets have it up to 40,000. So let's just say they get it for an average of 20,000. You're talking about $7 billion. $7 billion. That's just Meta, right? How does Microsoft respond? How does Apple respond? So you Google. Think about all these companies that are using these chips and going to buy them in bulk. Now, here's the interesting part is that's for the H100. In 6 to 12 months, they might be announcing the H200, right? Which they weren't even allowed to sell in China, but they will be able to sell in America and other countries. What's the price tag on that? How fast can they produce those? And so you're talking about billions of dollars that is going to be brought in the revenue. And that's where a company like AMD comes in, right? Because if these chips are selling for $20,000, well, can they come in with a semi that undercuts that price? Yeah. May not perform as fast, right? And for companies that can't spend that type of money, but they can have a price point that maybe comes in underneath it that can serve a different type of business, right? Maybe, you're not $1 trillion company like the ones we named, but you need the service, right? You just can't afford it at that price point. So AMD has a role to play in this as well. So I like them too.
Also, too, like if you're looking at going back to the innovation part, the main reason why a lot of companies are jumping or accelerating this bandwagon is one of the few things that America has innovated on is this chip space, when we don't have a lot of other things that we've created over the last 5 or 10 years to get, like, it was a social media push for 10 years. Crypto didn't pan out, and I'm not going to say it didn't pan out, but like what VCs put into it they overinflated it and then it fell because a few years over at Davos, the big thing was crypto, and then things slid back. Now AI and its chips are going to help accelerate both spaces. You have to invest for the long term. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Shout out to those of you in Red Panda who've been to AMD since 21 and 40. We've called all these companies out, but I am begging you to invest in these, or you're going to be really upset in the next 4 or 5 years that you missed out. And some of you may miss out on 5, 6, 700% by not executing. If I've made you money, please put yes in chat. Investing is not that fucking hard.
Yeah,
just buy the best sectors and buy the best too.
In 21, I exercised an option on AMD for 5 contracts. So I had 500 shares. And so it cost me money to get them. And at that time, AMD was at $139.
Yep.
In 2022, AMD dropped to $72. And so I started saying, oh my gosh, why did I exercise this option? But in my mind, when I did it, I said, I'm thinking about this company long term.
Long term. Yep.
Right. I could have made the $40,000 and taking that intrinsic value and selling the option. But I said, nah, this is a good price point for it. I think I had the call at $75. Let me do it here. Let me get the 500 shares. I did that. You look at today, AMD is at $170, $172. That's the power of patience. That's the power of believing in your game plan and sticking to it.
Yep. It was at $12 in 2018.
We're in a tech revolution. The last time this happened was .com boom.
Yep.
It's happened 3 times in history so far. The invention of the internet, the .com boom, and now this. And they're saying this is going to be bigger than any the prior to. And even when Sam Altman, he said it in Davos, where you look at ChatGPT 2 to ChatGPT 4, it's night and day.
Yeah,
it's night and day. So it's like the amount, the progress that's being made in a short period of time is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, man, this is something that, like I said, I would highly suggest that you would be invested in technology. This is the goal. This is the gold rush, and it's going to last for about 10 years.
And the difference between the .com bubble and now, it was a lot of fool's gold in that market. It wasn't a lot of great companies that was generating revenue. Like OpenAI is probably worth more than every company with the exception of Amazon in that .com boom. Like you said, the evolution from ChatGPT 2 to 4, it would have taken some companies 10, 15 years. They've innovated inside of 2 or 3 years. Like, I am begging you guys, like, the proof is in the pudding. The returns are there. It's talked about globally. Please do not miss this wave. And I know some of you asking about SMCI and ASML. Pick the ones that you believe in. Once you do your research on them and invest heavily in them, it's going to cost you millions if you don't do so.
And once again, it's never a good idea to just throw all your money into a stock that's at an all-time high. So I'm not saying that, but dollar cost average, over the course of time, stocks will pull back. Just because there's a pullback doesn't mean that it's a collapse. Yeah, just have patience. But over the long term, you have to consistently put money into these stocks over the next 5 years. The next 5 years is probably the most important time in human history.
I agree, especially on a net return basis too. Mm-hmm. We're going to see a lot of growth and a lot of innovation because it's not outside of, like, energy is getting destroyed right now. Healthcare, tech, and communications are the only 3 spaces that really matter sector-wise for the United States of America. And if you're missing out, it's going to cost. I am begging you, like, please do not miss. Because as some of you who've been watching since 2020 and you messaged me this weekend, like, hey, I missed out. What should I do?
Yeah.
2 tech, 2 index. I can't tell you anything else.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when
you have to start putting the money in.
When is the time? And then we put up a post saying we've officially hit the bull market. And people are saying, well, when's the time? Well, now study the history of bull markets. How long do they last? What was the longest one? How long is the shortest one? Yep. And so you can kind of figure out, you know what, this might be the time for me, right? Because everybody's situation is going to be different. But the S&P has hit an all-time high. NASDAQ is approaching it. Dow. Do we want it at the all-time highs? No, not realistically.
No, but even Frank talked about it earlier. Even when you're at the all-time high, from here, we normally end up 12% up higher. Like
higher than that. Yep.
go read Money Master go read any book from Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger. Like the market is permanently rigged to stay up, because if our market collapses for a 4-year cycle, we'll enter into a global depression. They're not going to let that happen.